Imagine growing up in a house where your parents casually threaten to bury you in concrete. And not as a joke. Not as some messed up expression parents say when they're angry. They point to the backyard patio, the family barbecue area, and tell you your sister is buried underneath it. Then they tell you that if you don't behave, you'll end up there too. Now imagine eating dinner above your dead sibling's body. Imagine inviting neighbours over for barbecues while human remains are literally underneath everyone's feet. Because that actually happened. But that's still not the worst part of this case. Tonight, we are going to talk about Fred and Rose West, the married couple who tortured, assaulted, murdered teenage girls, including their own daughter, while pretending to be a normal family living in suburban England. Welcome to the podcast You Can't Unhear. When people talk about serial killers, there's usually this image that comes to mind. A lone monster. Some isolated predator hiding in the shadows. But Fred and Rose West were different. That's what makes this case feel so deeply unsettling. Because they operated like a family business. A husband and wife team. And the house they lived in, 25 Cromwell Street in Gloucester, England, looked painfully ordinary from the outside. That's the thing about evil sometimes. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like neighbours waving at you across the fence. Fred West was born in 1941 into a deeply dysfunctional family. And before we even get into the murders, I need you to understand something important about this case. This is one of those stories where trauma doesn't excuse evil, but it helps explain how something this horrific became possible. Fred later claimed his father forced him into sexual acts with animals as a child. Police also suspected Fred had an incestuous relationship with his own mother. However, Fred was a compulsive liar, so not every detail can be confirmed. But investigators did believe there was severe sexual dysfunction and abuse inside the home. And honestly, when children grow up in environments where abuse becomes normalized, their understanding of boundaries gets completely destroyed. Fred genuinely seemed unable to understand why incest was wrong. At one point, after getting his 13-year-old sister pregnant, he reportedly asked police what he had done wrong because he thought this kind of relationship was normal. That line genuinely chilled me. Not because it sounds evil, but because it sounds so disconnected. Like morality itself had been wired incorrectly from the beginning. Fred also suffered multiple head injuries throughout his life, including a severe car accident when he was 17. Then Fred met Catherine Costello, known as Rena. She already had a complicated life. When they reunited, she was pregnant by another man who had disappeared. But Fred married her anyway, and together they raised 2 daughters, Charmaine and Anne-Marie. From the outside, it might have looked like Fred was trying to build a family. But behind closed doors, he was abusive. Violent toward Rena, violent toward the children. Eventually, Rena tried to escape with the girls. And I think moments like that are important to sit with for a second. Because leaving abusive relationships is terrifying enough already. But trying to leave while protecting children, that's survival mode at its highest level. Unfortunately, Fred found out about her plan. And instead of letting her leave with the children, he kicked her out alone. Then things escalated fast. Fred began another relationship with a woman named Anne. She became pregnant. And then suddenly, she disappeared. No investigation. No outrage. Nobody even properly reported her missing. And I think that says a lot about vulnerable women during that era, especially women connected to unstable men. People disappeared quietly back then, too quietly. Then came Rosemary West. And honestly, Rose might be one of the most terrifying women in true crime history. Not because she was manipulated into violence, but because she actively participated in it. Rose had also suffered horrific abuse growing up. Her father sexually abused her and reportedly told her he owned her because he brought her into the world. Again, trauma doesn't automatically create monsters, but unresolved trauma mixed with sadism can become catastrophic. Fred and Rose bonded over violence, domination, and extreme sexual behavior, and together they became something worse than either of them alone. That dynamic fascinates criminologists even today, because some criminal couples don't just support each other's darkness, they amplify it. Almost like two people giving each other permission to become fully monstrous. Rose convinced Fred to bring the children back from the orphanage where Rena had placed them. By 1970, there were now 3 children living in the house: Charmaine, Anne-Marie, and baby Heather. And this is where the story becomes almost unbearable. While Fred was serving a short prison sentence for theft, Rose became increasingly violent toward the children. Eventually, she strangled Charmaine to death because the little girl kept crying for her biological mother. Just think about how heartbreaking that is. A child missing her mother. And instead of comfort, she was murdered for it. When Fred returned and Rose told him what happened, his response was reportedly just, "Oh, okay." No shock. No grief. No panic. That reaction says everything. Together they dismembered Charmaine's body and buried her in the backyard. Then, about a year later, Rena came looking for her children. She immediately noticed Charmaine was missing and became suspicious. And before she could report anything to police, Rose strangled her too. At this point, murder had become normalized inside the relationship. That's another terrifying thing about repeated violence. The first murder is psychologically difficult for many killers. After that, it often becomes easier. The couple eventually moved and opened a brothel. Fred acted as the pimp, while Rose worked as a prostitute. They had more children, 7 more. And none of those children were safe. The house itself became a nightmare. Teenage girls were kidnapped, assaulted, tortured, and murdered inside a soundproofed basement so neighbors wouldn't hear the screams. I think what disturbs me most about this case is the duality. Because upstairs, life still continued. Children ate meals. People watched TV. Neighbors passed by outside. Meanwhile, downstairs, unimaginable violence was happening. That split between ordinary life and horror is what makes certain cases feel almost unreal. Even their own children were abused. Anne-Marie survived, though she suffered horrific treatment. Heather did not. Heather was strangled by her own parents, dismembered, and buried beneath the concrete patio. Then the family built a barbecue area directly on top of her grave. That detail haunts people for a reason, because psychologically it almost feels symbolic. Like they wanted complete control over her even after death. And what Rose did afterward might genuinely be one of the cruelest things I've ever heard in a criminal case. She would threaten the remaining children by pointing to the patio and saying they would end up buried in concrete too if they misbehaved. Imagine being a child living with that fear every single day. No safe parent. No safe home. No safe room. Nothing. The children were also forced into prostitution and exploited for adult materials sold by their parents. And I think cases like this force people to confront an uncomfortable truth. Some parents do not see children as human beings. They see them as property. extensions of themselves, objects to control. Eventually, one of the children finally reached a breaking point and asked a friend for help. That tiny moment changed everything. Police raided the home under the excuse of investigating theft, but during interviews with the children, the horrifying reality started unraveling. Anne-Marie came forward, too. And eventually, Fred confessed to multiple murders. When investigators excavated the patio, they found bodies buried beneath the concrete. More remains were discovered throughout the property and at Fred's previous residence. The house had basically become a graveyard. Fred later tried protecting Rose by claiming she knew nothing about the murders. But Rose completely turned on him in court. And weirdly, that betrayal crushed Fred emotionally. Not the murders. Not the torture. Not the children. Her betrayal. That detail tells you so much about narcissistic criminal psychology. Some people don't care about morality. They care about loyalty. Fred eventually hanged himself in prison before the trial ended. Rose was convicted in 1994 and sentenced to life imprisonment. Even decades later, this case still horrifies people because it destroys one of the most basic human assumptions we have. That home is supposed to be safe. Parents are supposed to protect. Family is supposed to mean love. But inside that house, family became the weapon. And maybe that's why this story feels impossible to shake off. Not because the killers were monsters hiding in darkness, but because they sat at the dinner table pretending. As always, stay safe out there, guys. See you on the next episode of the podcast You Can't Unhear.